If you put on a graph, you have dopamine, time, and then let's say you have a goal out in the horizon, the house, the car, the boat, whatever. Well, as you're moving towards that, you're like kind of going like this, but there's suffering. Because the root word of patience is actually patenti in Latin, and do you know what that means? To suffer. Because if I don't have something, that I'm going to suffer. Dopamine is the anticipation of something. It's not actually the getting the thing. I'm sure we've all like had something and then you get it and you're like, yeah, like, no, it's the same thing. So like you have this big desire, you get it, and then you're like, okay, it's the anticipation.
So you set higher goal.
Well, so you set a higher goal and then you start the whole process over again. But what he's saying is if you look at the graph over time, the house, the car, the boat, the watch, whatever, like all of those material things in the physical world, you actually spend most of your time suffering with like very small windows of actually getting it. So the idea is there has to be something underneath that's actually more sustaining and fulfilling. Yes?
Yes.
And that is
exactly.
And that's really, I think, the combination of the two, which is cool that as I'm saying this, she's going like this. Like the combination of the two is, I think, like the way.
Yeah.
And it's the way that he intended.
This is the way.
Well, and I look at our businesses as a ministry. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have had to encourage and pray. And I mean, I look at my business as a full-fledged ministry.
Yeah, I view our organization that way. That the more people I can bring into the ecosystem, the more I can love on them, help them, support them. So
I think you feel like you're changing lives.
Well, I don't. Well, what's interesting is like I have the good fortune where people will reach out to me and be kind, but what I constantly and perpetually remind them for their sake and mind is like somebody reach out to me like, oh man, you're making such a big impact on me. I'm like, listen, just so you know, it's not me.
Yeah, good for you.
It's him. Like, yes, thank you. Well, here's because I know I could be prideful.
Yes.
We can all be prideful. So it's like him through me.
Yeah.
Thank you. But just know that that's what's really true.
I know that.
And that, I think, shields you from making what just happened like
About you.
a big deal or about me, because it's not.
Yeah.
Because if he sees something in me, it's only because it exists in him. Otherwise, he wouldn't see it in me.
So true.
So do you feel like a vessel?
100%. Which is what we're actually asked to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is the emptying of self.
Yes.
The dying to oneself.
Every
right?
day.
Yeah.
And
So
it
pick up
doesn't
your cross
happen
and carry it,
just
die to
once.
yourself.
Yeah.
So that way I can,
Every day.
yes. So that way I can be a vessel for like the spirit. And then it goes out into the world as an example of his glory, not mine.
You know, my kids went to Spring Hill, which is a Christian camp up in Michigan. Hi, I'm Joni.
I'm Ben.
Yeah.
Hi.
Joni's on our attraction calls. I give her lots of static.
Yeah.
Hence, in a loving, playful way. Yeah.
I can take it and I
Yeah.
can give it back.
She does. Yeah, it's good.
When I go to pick the kids up, this was years ago. I've got grandkids now.
So much.
They would always have a speaker that would talk to the parents and the grandparents that would come to pick the kids up. And this one told the most beautiful story, and this is how I envision it. He goes, my grandma shared Jesus with so many people, and when she died, I just pictured the picture that she painted for me, because she said, I can't remember what his name is, but she said, it's my goal to have a big old front porch and have everybody on that porch that I have shared Jesus with. And to, when they die and they come to heaven, they're going to come on my porch and they're going to say, it was because you shared Jesus with me.
Hey, thanks, bro.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and to make it full circle, we live in a world in which we have a megaphone, which is media.
Yes, we do.
And my kind of really, truthfully, it's a version of pride. Because when I'm overly concerned about what other people, like, I think pride can show up in two ways. One is in like repentance, but the other is in, look at me. So me shrinking, and I'm not made in the image of something that shrinks, is actually like me saying like, no, that's not for me, is actually a form of pride.
Yes.
Where like, look,
And
this is
fear.
like and fear. And like, this is like a vessel that now I can, and it's this vehicle where now I have this megaphone where I can amplify and be an example of goodness.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
And then you can take, because I thought about what you said to me. You're like, yo, I was like the best recruiter in like what I was doing before.
I was.
Well, what's interesting though is that It's context. So I was talking to I was given a breakout session, and it was interesting because this guy wanted to stand up and was kind of arguing with me about what I was saying, which was interesting that he would choose that time to do that. And he was wrong. But he was saying I think this is the way, right? Like picking up the phone. And I'm like, look, what I'm aware of is two things can be true at the same time. Yes?
How old was he?
Yes, 65. So two things can be true at the same time. Yes?
Yes.
And because two things can be true at the same time, what happens is sometimes we have a love affair with our point of view because we want to be right.
Right.
At the same time, I'm interested in unemotionally assessing what's true.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if whatever you were doing in a time perhaps before there were platforms, how can I do that with platforms? And here's what I would propose is okay, we went 11, think about this. We went 11 years as a company with no competitors. Zero.
Yeah.
We now have 22 models that look just like us.
Yeah.
So what I'm aware of is that is the context with which we're trying to attract now. So how do I elevate above my model's better than yours?
Yeah.
The only way to do that is
Have them fall in love with us.
with me becoming the type of person that somebody would say yes to without even knowing what it is.
Yeah.
And the way you do that is
Leave EXP to wait to come back on me.
right.
There's no way he could have ever cold called enough
Yeah.
and
To find him.
to find me. or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
He put out the video and
And it was very helpful.
there's no way I would have ever been so objectionless
Yeah.
when it was time to come over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no I was like, yeah, that's my dude. We're going.
Yeah. What do I need to do?
Shoot me over the
Send me the text. I'm ready.
Yeah.
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 So, but you see how in the world that we live in today,
Yeah.
that is the answer to rise above 22 competing models.
Yeah.
Is the best way to show somebody you can help them is by helping them. And media provides this unbelievable space to give stuff, really good information away for free that's helpful.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is people don't dig deep enough to figure out what do I know that's valuable?
I think what's stopping me on that is, everybody talks about CRMs. I'm just going to be honest. I don't have one.
Yeah.
I use Excel. People know me, like me, and trust me because I'm real.
So here's what's cool is what's coming to my mind is the best form of advertising is authenticity.
I know, but I can't help them with.
And that's okay, but those aren't your people. Now you find other people in your upline who can, find someone who benefits from you and what you're doing,
Yeah.
and figure out how can they, and we're all shareholders too.
Yeah.
So if they have a question about something, you'd be like, hey, go check out Aaron's thing. You know what I mean? Because we're all part of the same company.
Yeah.
So we can't be all things to all people.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
So what I'm curious about utilizing that skill and applying it with media. So what did you do with the people? What were those conversations about? What was your mental maps? What were you doing? How were you doing it? And then how can I apply that to real estate and use media as a mechanism to do it?
Yeah.
Where I can send myself, the digital version of myself, I don't know who that guy is.
Yeah.
Never met him before in my life.
Right.
He clearly feels like he knows me, yes?
Yes.
But yeah, so how can I send myself in the digital form
Yeah.
to go form relationships with other humans?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And it doesn't have to be cookie.
No, and I can't wait to for you to start to do it because I'm gonna be every time. Well, you can't duplicate yourself. I'm like, that's not true. Ask Joni.
So good.
Yeah, so good to see you.
Yes.
I'm hosting you now, man.
Okay, let's do it.
So, hey, from EXPCon Miami 2024, Aaron
Awesome.
Novello.
Nice to see you in person, dude.
Yes, dude.
Yeah.
We hang out online all the time, but
Yeah.
this is why we come to events.
Mhm.
And events, in-person stuff is still a thing.
It
It
is.
still matters.
Yeah.
So what do you get out of events? Because we do everything online now, but you still make the time to come to meet with people. Why?
Yeah, two things. One is you can do culture remote, but it can't just be all high tech. It also has to be high touch.
Yeah.
So a perfect example is that is me and you are on Zoom calls on a regular basis, and now we get to physically see each other,
Yeah. High fives.
and that increases the kind of intensity of the connection and the relationship. The other thing that's true about me coming to these events is that proximity is power.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that we're all one relationship away from changing our family tree for the rest of our life. So I'm constantly and perpetually looking for those types of relationships.
Yeah.
I've probably had, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 of those relationships, and moving forward,
Okay.
my goal is to be that individual for other people.
Love it.
At the same time, if I'm in a position of leadership, I have to be constantly learning and growing and seeking those relationships out. And somewhere like this is a fantastic place to do it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
glad to see you in the flesh, man.
Yeah, man.
Um,
I'm a real boy.
you have told your media story before, right?
Yeah.
Like you're into media, you're doing it well, you're teaching others to do media at a
Mhm.
high level. But I mean, what? Not even 3 years ago, you were like, media, no thanks. Like, what was the aha? Like, what was the breakthrough?
Yeah. So, well, I was the guy who used to make fun of people who did media.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
And-
us standing here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I heard a few things that really caused me to change my thinking, because I think the most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind.
Yeah.
And mine was sufficiently closed on that.
Okay.
And I think there's another saying that says once somebody makes a little bit of money, they become a piss poor listener.
Right.
So you start to get good at something and you're like, nah, like I don't need to learn anything else.
Yeah.
But I heard this following quote, which really caused me to pause, right? Because the way I built my business in residential resale, 2,000 transactions,
Yep.
did 100 deals a year, 10 years in a row, 200 deals a year twice, was through telemarketing. Picking up the phone,
Right.
pound pavement, 3 hours a day,
same
6
here,
days a week.
Same here.
And while I'm aware that's true, two things can be true at the same time,
Yeah.
right? So that does work. What's interesting though is I heard the following quote, which is that if you are a crappy marketer, you have to become a rock star salesperson.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
That hit me when you said that on a call the other day. I'm like,
Yeah, right?
I was cold call cowboy, man.
Yeah.
That's all I knew how to do.
That's
and
right.
It was like, it changed my world when I hear you also being a sales guy.
Correct.
And I'm realizing I've been running that treadmill for 10 years
That's
now,
right.
man. Like, I don't know if I got another 10 in me.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I started, that quote opened my mind enough to start to really rethink that space and to go down the path of figuring it out.
Yeah.
So the idea is, let's say we were telemarketing, that's
Yeah.
one-to-one. I want inputs and outputs to be disassociated,
Yeah.
right? One-to-one is associated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I make one phone call, I get one listing, I get one commission.
Yep.
Well, what's interesting about this space is me and you can do this. I can send the digital version of myself
Yeah.
out into the world
Yeah.
to basically speak to an infinite amount of people, endless amounts of people.
24/7.
24 hours a day,
Yeah.
7 days a week.
Yeah.
And people can form a para-social relationship with me. They can decide if they know, like, and trust me without actually physically meeting me.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is then they call me. So it revealed itself to be a superior strategy.
Yes.
And so both can be true at the same time, but
Yeah.
one's more true than something else. And
Yeah.
then I started to see some of the people that are really monetizing attention very well.
Yeah.
And I started to look at them and be like, you know what? Kim Kardashian is not smarter than me, bro.
Yeah.
Like, she just understands attention better.
Yeah.
Or like,
Looks a little better. Too.
yeah. And the Logan brothers, like Jake and Paul, like, they just understand attention really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're turning that into like enormous, ungodly amounts of money. So the whole intention isn't just about money, but it allows me to magnify my impact.
Yeah.
Right. So not only is it a fantastic mechanism for like lead gen, whether you're doing attraction, and it's allowed us to grow to an organization of 356 agents in like 2.5 years.
Huge. Love it.
And I hadn't picked up the phone once.
Lots of the agents, I think it's something, I saw a stat like the average agent in our industry is closing somewhere between 6 and 18 transactions a year.
Yeah.
So with everything you're seeing, all the people you've coached,
Sure.
what are the one or two things you think people are either missing right now or tripping over or stumbling on? What are the patterns?
Yeah. So one of the patterns is, because with those statistics, is 76% of all agents in the United States haven't sold one listing,
Whoa.
meaning their own listing.
Whoa. Okay.
So that means only 20-ish% of the whole agent population are taking all of the listings.
Okay.
So a thing to be very conscious and purposeful about that I think we miss in an attempt to try to grab money, because we get into an industry where there's no stability, there's no certainty, there's no paycheck, right? So you only get compensated when somebody like signs something or does something, is that we try to do everything, but we're not thoughtful about what's worth stacking time on top of. So when I look at that statistic, what that shows me is a very small percentage of the population is getting the lion's share of the listings, and all of the leverage is on the listing side.
Yeah.
So if I was going to be stacking my time, I would need to be stacking my time on that particular skill.
Yep.
So learning what to say and how to say it, where to find leads, where to get contact information, how to take that from a initial conversation to an appointment set,
Yep.
to a pre-qualification conversation, to a listing appointment,
Yeah.
handling objections, close. That's what we're stacking time on top
Repeat.
of.
Yeah.
And as time progresses, it'll continue to prove itself valuable, because what all of these platforms, whether it be MLS, Zillow, like all of these platforms need is data.
Yeah.
But the data that they need is listings.
Yeah.
And if I can become a prodigious provider of data,
Yeah.
I will always be disproportionately compensated for my efforts.
Hey,
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way. It's like you bring the data, you bring the value.
Yeah, so I don't even consider,
Yeah.
like when I was listing property in high
Yeah.
volume, over 100 listings a year, people are like, oh, you're a listing agent. I'm like, no, I'm a data provider.
Wow.
Because if they could figure
Yeah.
out a way
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get the data without you, they would.
That cut you out.
100%.
Yeah.
So I can continue to be disproportionately rewarded. The second thing that I would say keeps agents stuck is that 65% of us grew up in families that live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
So what that means is that and in the United States, the same ratio, it's about 7 out of 10 couldn't come up with $2,000 for an emergency.
Mhm.
So if you're standing at Starbucks, 7 people fit that criteria.
Yeah.
And because of that, we grew up with hearing things like money doesn't grow on trees.
Yeah.
Eat all the food on your plate.
Right.
And if you want something done right, you need to do it yourself,
Do it yourself.
which is terrible guidance. Because if
Yeah.
you look at everybody who's ever said that to you, what is their life like?
Yeah.
They do everything themselves.
They're stuck.
And they're stuck.
Yeah.
So it's unwinding of that programming. And we all make 3 trades. One is time for money,
Yep.
which is fine.
Yep.
We just need to make sure we're being appropriately compensated.
Yeah.
The second is, though, which people never get to because of this programming,
Yeah.
is money for time.
Hmm.
So most agents that are stuck in that level of transactions, it's because they're doing everything themselves.
Yep.
And that programming, hey,
Yep.
if you do it yourself, you can save money.
Yep.
And what I like to tell people all the time is like, hey, how many really successful people do you know that have no employees? 0.
Right.
So the second thing that I would be aware of is you have to undo that thinking and trade money for time. Things like transaction coordinators,
Yes.
listing
Yes.
coordinators,
Yeah.
and that will free you up to do the actual kind of highest value activity, which is prospect, lead, follow-up, go on appointments, negotiate deals.
Totally.
Yep.
The best part of everything you just said is most of that is not even skill building, it's mindset.
100%.
If your mindset gets on the right side, you're 80% of the way there.
And this is why proximity is so important.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing more sad than watching somebody run enthusiastically in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So figuring out,
Yeah.
like getting proximity to somebody, be like, hey, here's what I'm aware of. I love that you're excited, smart, and ambitious. I'm a little bit further down the path.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm smarter than you. I'm just a little bit further down the path. And as a guide, I highly recommend that you stack time on top of this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's power in clarity.
Yeah.
And the attrition rate in our business, 76% are out within a year, 87 within 5.
Crazy.
But the reason they are is because of what we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just hunting and pecking.
Well,
Yeah.
and shiny object syndrome,
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, got to
Yeah.
do this, got to do that, where there's immense power and focus.
Yeah.
And then if you focus in the right areas over time, what happens is your efforts compound. And that's what I
So-
want.
If you're feeling spread thin, I think this industry is probably the worst offender of being spread thin and
Yeah.
shiny object syndrome. So
Yeah.
take a page out of this book, y'all, and subscribe. Aaron's got way more good content on this stuff. So thanks,
Yeah.
brother.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you, Miami.
Let's go. Let's grow. YouTube is where it's at, dude.
What I told her.
And it's what Pineda told me 3 years ago. He was right. Remember that guy yesterday? He asked like, "What's the best platforms?" I'm like, "You shouldn't be thinking that. You should be thinking building an ecosystem of attention."